authorization for the conduct of this meeting. It says, we in this country are presently experiencing and having to deal with the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, and are presently under a state of emergency as declared by the governor of the state of Tennessee. Pursuant to Executive Order number 60, issued by Tennessee Governor Bill Lee on June 29th, 2020, this committee work session is being conducted pursuant to the governor's directives, which allow local government bodies to conduct their meetings without its members being physically present and assemble together to reduce exposing the general public, the members of those local government bodies, and the governmental staff from the possibility of contracting the coronavirus. Is there any objection? And with no objection, let the record reflect that this meeting is being electronically and being shown to the general public by visiting www.youtube.com Signal Watch. All right, so we'll proceed with the roll call.
Jay Bell. Alice Cannella.
Prayer here.
Darian Collins. Kenny Custer. Doug Fisher.
Here.
Tyler Howell. Curtis Jones.
Here.
Walker Jones.
Here.
Bill McGriff.
Here.
Gene Shipley. Boyd Veal. Dick G.
Here. And we do have a excuse me, a quorum, and so we can proceed. We have several items for the Variance Committee today. And if you've looked at your agenda, they deal primarily with water hoses. So what we'll do is Natasha is going to call each one of them individually and bring them into the meeting, and then we'll have them make their request. If you, while she's doing that, if you would review the situation for, I assume we're going with Kevin Schofield in order. Is that right, Natasha?
Yes, sir.
Or Schoolfield, I guess. I'll remind you that we have dealt with this situation before and granted a variance in a particular situation. And I just remind you that the question of possible precedent. But the policy is not to grant these requests in general.
Hello.
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 Hi, is this Kevin Schoolfield?
Yes, sir, it is.
Hey there. Welcome to the meeting of the WWTA. My name is Dick G, and I'm the chair of the board. And you're speaking to the Variance Committee. And if you would present your request, we'll hear it now. Okay.
Okay. My wife and I were out of town, and my son had stopped by the house and washed his truck. And I had a nozzle on the hose, but he did not turn the hose bib off. And sometime between that point and when we returned back in town, the hose had busted and, of course, ran into the backyard. And that's when I discovered it, when I returned to the house.
All right. All right, let me put it to the members of the Variance Committee. Anybody want to make a comment?
Does he have a picture of the busted hose?
I do not. Of course, at that point, I disconnected it and threw it in the dumpster.
All I hear is silence. Anybody else want to make a comment?
I was just curious what the amount was. I think on all these, anytime we consider these things, at least ought to know what kind of money we're talking about.
Yes, I think the total bill was like $595.
Yeah.
As
I
opposed
believe
to,
the sewer part of.
Mr. Schoolfield, as a general rule, the request you're making is not covered
Okay.
by an
Okay.
adjustment. And there have to be really extenuating circumstances that would justify a vote by the variance committee, I believe. But it's the variance committee, so I need to hear from members what your feelings are.
Okay. I mean, I understand. I work for the county. So. you know,
If the water ran out into the
it-
backyard,
Yes, sir.
that means we didn't treat it. It didn't go in. It didn't go into the sewer.
Correct. The
I
hose
think-
was actually laying in the backyard.
Yeah.
You know, we've been through this a few times, Dick, and Mr. Schoolfield, and you know, I'm sure you know, most people come here are going to present their case and they're honest and sincere about it. But we've had some that come in here and they filled up pools, we believe, and things of that nature. And I just believe
Yes,
we have
sir.
to stick with our policy of sorts as to what it is. And I vote to decline his request.
You want to make that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to decline Mr. Schoolfield's request.
Okay. A second?
second,
Thank
I'll
you, Doug.
second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to thank Mr. Schoolfield for you know, being honest with us about the situation. I do appreciate him coming and explaining.
Yeah.
And you know, this, if it were an emergency situation or something like that, it might be a different story, but I don't see this as an exception.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I sure do appreciate y'all's time.
All right. Thank you for calling in, though. We need to vote.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. So let's vote, and we need to go around and call the roll, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure you need a roll call. We're not expending any, we're saving money.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, very good. Any opposed?
Yeah, I am.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm opposed.
So that's a 3-2 vote. That's not exactly unanimous, is it?
No, but the ayes have it.
Is Mr. Allen on the line? Do we need to come back and revisit this thing?
All right. I'd like to mention that Mike Patrick said that we were trying to be more customer focused, sort of so hard nosed. If we didn't treat this water, I don't see why we're trying to charge him. That's a lot of money.
Bill, what?
I think we ought to revisit this. I think that everybody deserves a chance to make a mistake, and I think we're too worried about setting precedent. We worry about the legal part of it, and these are people, and we didn't treat that water, and so we're going to charge him for it just because it ran from the water company. The water companies all have adjustment. Well, we have an adjustment policy, and I just think that's a little harsh. That's my opinion.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me ask one question, Dick. I'd asked it before, and apparently I didn't get heard, or nobody had the answer to it. 500, I agree, is a lot of money, Curtis, a lot of money, Bill. But my second question is that 500 was in relation to what is a typical one? So it's probably 200 or 300 opposed to a $500 partial.
It's $336.82, and the adjustment amount, if this is correct, would be $263.82, which would cut it down to, I don't know.
I mean,
70 something. You know, I it's kind of hard for me to vote to charge somebody for water we didn't even treat. And obviously, I've known Kevin forever, and he's a decent, honest as the day is long
We're
guy.
just,
And
we're wrestling with this.
you know, so
Hold him off until. Okay, all right. Well, this is a pertinent discussion because it's not like we've got another one of these coming right behind it. So.
You of them.
Well, let me say this about, you know, I do understand what you're saying about that this is water that we didn't treat, but when rates are set, that is taken into consideration that there will be some water that is used that we don't treat. So we'd have to be certain, you know, we'd have to think about that when rates are set, if every time water is used that didn't go to the sewer system wasn't charged a sewer fee for. I just think that we need to think about that. Now, what I would say is maybe in these cases, we could consider some kind of cost sharing. Mr. Schoolfield was very straightforward and told us what happened. It was an honest mistake. You know, maybe we could consider some kind of cost sharing, you know, not just completely refund the entire amount, but look at, you know, possibly reducing the amount that he owes us because of his request, you know, at the variance committee, his honesty about it, you know, about what happened. You know, I could consider something like that, some kind of cost sharing.
Well, we have a similar request waiting, and I don't know that we want to change horses in the middle of the stream kind of thing. But this discussion is pertinent to the next request. How do you want to handle that? And
it'll be pertinent. It'll be pertinent to any future requests like this too.
Absolutely.
Is
I don't know that now is the time to do that.
Is Mike Patrick here?
Yeah. You want to chime in, Mike, or you want?
I just wonder how he felt about it. He was talking about earlier, and you know, they changed the policy on the pools. They're allowing not to be charged to fill up their pool now. And he said, we're trying to be more customer focused. And y'all know I'm for the little guy. I mean, if we're not treating the water, why are we charging him?
I guess we're taking people's word for it. And I remember I felt like we'd been duped before by someone who said that the water was run by a construction firm, yet they filled up a pool. We sort of got a feel for
I know
it.
there's all kinds of opportunities for people to take advantage of us if we're not careful.
I just don't want to open up a floodgate. We have a policy, and it's unfortunate. We all make mistakes and have issues where we got to pay the piper, and I don't know if we need to change our billing adjustments of sorts to accommodate this, but it seems pretty direct.
So we have one person waiting and another person on this agenda to talk to us about this, and we're in the process of I'm suggesting that we call these people and tell them that we need to postpone their variance presentation until we have an opportunity to discuss this and decide what we're going to do. Does that make any sense? I'm happy to consider an alternative, but
I would like to hear from Mike.
So I was having technical difficulties, Curtis, or I would have responded then, but my concern concern is how we proceed in the future with these adjustments. We could get a lot of adjustments and then we wind up in the situation of telling someone we believe you, but we don't believe this other person kind of thing. That's where the problem comes in for us as staff trying to navigate this situation.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's a way to deal with that and limiting any adjustments to one in every 12-month period or something. There are avenues that we can take. You know, the water consumption is just the method used to determine what a person's sewer bill is. They had to come up with something that's pretty logical. But a lot of that water if that water consumption does not go to the sewer system, that's the reason we have the possibility for an extra water meter that people can have that would water the lawn or something that doesn't go into the sewer system. So maybe we ought to think about that. And there are always people who would take advantage. And believe me, I dealt with enough of those. But if you had a policy where you could do an adjustment, and I don't know if it was Alice or who said we could possibly, or maybe it was Dick, cost share. You know, we pay half and the customer pays half. It gives them an incentive not to take advantage of us. There are ways to deal with this that's so you don't just have to be it's yes or no and that's it. There are policies, and so
We have three requests for variances that are similar. One we've dealt with Mr. Schoolfield. We have a customer on the line waiting, and a Mark Allen on behind him. I'm going to suggest that we call Mr. Dempster, who is waiting, and ask him for some time for us to discuss this issue. Mike, does that make? I don't think we're prepared to deal with these variance requests with this lack of agreement on what the policy ought to be.
So we can discuss amongst staff possible policies along the lines of what Bill was talking about. Maybe we can do one adjustment like this every 2 years or something like that. We'll discuss that internally and come back to the board with a possible recommendation. And
in the meantime, we'll get back to each of these three people who are making this request and tell them that we are, certainly in Mr. Schoolfield's situation, we'll tell him we are reconsidering his request.
Something else I'd like to say.
With no expectation it will change, but we're looking at it. And we'll delay Allen and Dempster until a time where we have agreed on what the policy will be.
Something else I'd like to mention is, we talk about people who lie and get away with this and stick it to the WWTA, but how many people have got stuck to the other way when we didn't treat their water, but we charged them anyway? I have a neighbor that lives here in Lakeside. He bought some new property that had a pool. He filled the pool up and he came into the variance committee and they made him pay for it. I think that's a lot worse than a person every once in a while lying about it. We have so many people that are getting it stuck to that should be treated fairly.
Well, Curtis, we did change the policy on the swimming pool.
Right, and I understand that, but I'm just saying we're still have the attitude that, hey, we still want to charge this guy even though we didn't treat his water. I mean,
okay, well, we're gonna talk about it. We're going to address this issue in the future. Yes, Doug.
So I would make a motion that represents what the chairman said in terms of contact all these people, put them all. I'm surprised, I'm taken back, but I didn't know that we were going to consider policy change. And if we are in fact considering policy change, then clearly these people cases need to be put off until that policy has been established. The second comment I would have for Mike and staff that's going to go back and relook at our policy. And I think Bill made a great point that it should be, if you're going to, it's going to be allowed, let it be allowed once in every, I'd say 3 years. I mean, it's not even 3 or 4 years. I mean, that shouldn't happen. That never happened to me and never happened to anybody on this call. But it's going to happen. And if it happens 1 in 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, that's fine. But I would like for the staff to come back with something that is just a definitive policy that these cases no longer come to a variance board, that it's either it is or it ain't. Take your pick.
All right.
Second.
So you've made a motion.
That
was a long motion, but I got it. Who wants to second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Walker. All in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Very good. That's what we'll do. So Natasha's in here with me now. Go back to Mr. Dempster, and you can.
He's actually on the live now. You can let him know that we're going to reconsider his request and come and reach out to him at the board.
Yeah.
He's on the line right now.
Oh, he is.
Yes, I don't want to hang up on him.
Mr. Dempster, are you there? Hello?
Yeah, this is still Kevin.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Is this Robin Dempster?
This is her son-in-law, yes, and I heard the discussion of the policy change.
Okay, very good. That's what I want to make sure that you understood. We would like for you to just delay your request until we reconsider this policy that we're discussing, and we will reschedule you when we're prepared to discuss it. Okay.
That sounds fair. Thank you guys for your consideration.
Thank you for holding on. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
We'll be in touch with you for sure.
Okay. I thought I heard that maybe Kevin was still on the line, Mr. Schoolfield.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're still on the line too. Okay, very good.
Yes.
So we will get back in touch with you.
Okay. And
All
you
right.
know, just to say, it was my fault, and even if we split it, you know, I understand. I like to say I've been with the county 29 years, and I know policies are policies. But like I say, none of it did go in the sewer, but it was my mistake. It was on my part. So I will be good with whatever y'all decide.
All right. Well, we appreciate you very much, and like I said, we will be back in touch and let you know what we've decided. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Okay. All right, Variance Committee, that has basically dealt with the agenda for the Variance Committee. The final request has been did not show, so we will not consider that request at this time. So back to the agenda. Well, we are now into the items for the Finance Committee, and I believe the Finance Committee is the only committee on the agenda today beyond the variance. So Mike, you want to give us an update on the consent decree and where we are?
So it seems like I've been saying this for months, and I'll say it again. We're much closer now, though, than we were before to actually signing the consent decree. We're down to just a few items at this point. I can't imagine that it goes past December before we actually have a signed consent decree. I mean, assuming there's just some reason, if we just can't come to terms with a few of the items that we still have remaining. But that appears to be the timeline we're looking at. I don't know that the election will have any effect or not, but that is a concern. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the CD at this point. Rolling into that, we also have to do an interjurisdictional agreement for flow with the city of Chattanooga for our various connections. And we have negotiated quite a bit on this, on the wording and the numbers in the interjurisdictional agreement. The latest version I got this morning at 7:40 a.m. So I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it's possible I will be coming to you all next week with this agreement and asking for authorization to sign it, depending on the content of the agreement. I've reviewed it with Rich and Scott. I just wanted to give you that heads up that I may be coming to you with that next Wednesday, because it is important that we can get this signed, resolved prior to the consent decree signing. I'll know a little more in the coming days.
Anybody have any questions about the consent decree? All right. The next item is report on the debt obligation, Exhibit C.
So this has to do with the refunding bond that we just entered into with First Horizon. This particular report is a requirement from the Tennessee Comptroller that we report that you all and the public are aware of this additional debt. So this is just a requirement from the Comptroller, and I'll be presenting it also in the board packet next week so we can comply with that requirement. But there's no real changes. It's what we thought it was going to be, the interest rate, the payments. There's nothing different about the bond. This is just fulfilling a requirement.
Okay. Any questions? Just a reminder that this refinancing will save us significant amount of money. What, roughly $500,000, Mike?
519,000 roughly.
Yeah. Very, very good.
Nice job.
Yeah. All right. The next item is Lee Highway Phase 2 final change order, Exhibit D.
So this is just to inform the board of where we are at with the Lee Highway project. We are complete. We broke the project into two phases, and just let me go back. This is the project where we disconnected from the Collegedale pump station and connected directly to the city of Chattanooga from the Lee Highway pump station. So we're finished with the project. It was broken up into two phases because there were some property complications that were going to cause us to potentially well exceed the deadline for with our agreement with Collegedale. So we broke it into two phases. Both phases came in under the approved amount that you all had approved for the project. So that's a plus, I think. The phase 1 had a 5% contingency and phase 2 had a 10% contingency. Either way, we came in under both those contingencies. So it turned out to be a good project for us. In addition to getting the new force main, there was a section of we were able to work with the county highway department and pave a good portion of Old Lee Highway, which is a positive for the residents in the area. So the project is complete, and it was a good project for us. And I just wanted to make you aware of that, of the outcome.
I just want to, excuse me, express my appreciation, Mike, to you. And I can't imagine the board doesn't agree with me on this, that it's always nice. We always see the beginnings of projects, but we've never really seen it wrapped up. And whether it's wrapped up and it's been a good project, or it's wrapped up and it's been a difficult project, it's done and it's complete. And it's nice to know that we've completed this one, not only completed it, but we completed it well. And that's just a great job to everybody. Anybody else got any comments?
I think you said it all. That's
Okay.
That's incredible.
All right, very good. The next item is kind of interesting. Mike, you're going to give us some new information this morning.
Oh, on your screens, you'll see two maps. They essentially show the same thing, just different views. So you may recall we have entered into a partnership with the city of Chattanooga at our various connections called the Economic and Environmental Infrastructure Improvement Partnership, which the mouthful, so we shorten that to E2I2. And basically it involves system upgrades and primarily storage in a number of our connections. Well, this particular map is showing our connection from the Lee Highway station. And the original plan for the city was we were going to partner with them and they were going to build a storage facility farther down on Shallowford Road. And they intend to do that, but it appears that after looking at some of the flows, it makes more sense to potentially break storage up into two different locations. And the idea being there's a pretty significant line that would need to be upsized. And if we break the storage up, we can potentially not have to upsize the line segment. And that's all part of our E2I2 partnership. So what you're seeing are two potential alternative property purchases to help with that storage breakup. Alternative one is preferable because, as you can see from the map, it is a larger property. It is also above where a potential overflow may occur. Alternative two, it has its pros and cons, potentially a less expensive property. There's another consideration to alternative one that I would just put out. One of our issues at the WWTA is we are scattered about, for lack of a better term. We have some facilities at the old East Ridge treatment plant for the field crew. Of course, we have the office here at the DRC. I guess would like the board to consider this alternative one property because we could potentially purchase that, go ahead and do the storage plan like we talked about, but then possibly long-term with the additional property, maybe have a consolidated WWTA office building there. Now the property's over $1 million at this point is the asking price, but there are other considerations. One, we'd have to do an appraisal, obviously, on both properties. And we also have to do some geotechnical investigations on the properties before we would ever actually make an offer. So that is part of the decision process. But I guess I'm interested in the feeling of the board on this potential site for an office, a consolidated office for the organization.
Mike, you've got alternative one, which is on the screen. There's a red line dividing into the two parts. You want to kind of explain what your idea is relative to that red line?
So if we were to not do the potential office portion of the property, the square, the divider line to the left of the large yellow outline would be the area that we would potentially put the storage. And we would only need the 2.3 acres roughly to place the storage and build the storage. So and that would be obviously less cost, probably in the neighborhood of $400,000 to purchase just the smaller 2.3 acre parcel.
Are you talking about moving the entire group out that way? Yourself, everyone, and creating your own individual office space, or is this a little satellite office in conjunction?
That would actually, the idea would be that would be where our main office would be. We would probably leave someone here at the DRC for permits just for the convenience of people coming and being able to deal with the county and the city all in one spot. But our current situation, the way we're scattered about is, well, it would be much better if everybody was reporting to one location. Plus, we would have control of our meetings. One of our issues here at the DRC is we have a hard time scheduling our meetings. So, and parking and other things. So there are some advantages to one location. Plus, this area would be convenient to Ooltewah and East Brainerd, not so much for Saudi, but not inconvenient to the East Ridge service area.
What about a time frame? What kind of, if all the pieces of your puzzle fell into place, when would they be? When would WWT be out? When would the WWTA have a presence there?
Well, first we would use the property to build the storage, and I think the potential office move is a much longer term. It's probably would be a 5-year plan, just because we have to watch how we spend our money, especially in the next 10 years.
Bill, do you want to ask a question about money?
First of all, I like to say I think it's a great idea to have a place for the WWTA to have their own offices. I've advocated that for a while. My concerns are the timing of it, but what do you estimate the entire parcel to cost if you buy the entire parcel versus the 2.3 acres for the storage tank?
Well, the property owner currently wants $200,000 per acre. That is the asking price.
Okay, and how much is the right-hand portion how much property is it?
So it's 2.3 acres, and that red line could move left if it needed to. We really only need about an acre to an acre and a half for the storage, but we need more property to actually build it. But once it's complete, it occupies a relatively small footprint, maybe an acre to an acre and a half. But we still have to have lay down area and that kind of thing. And we have.
Okay. Yeah. I certainly think it's worth a serious discussion because, as I said, I'm in favor of us having our own, or the WWTA having their own offices and it solves a lot of problems. It creates some short-term financing problems that we may be able to deal with. So, you know, it's, I guess I'm not prepared to say yes, but I am prepared to say that I agree with Mike's plan. And if we can swing it financially with all the other capital projects we're going to have to swing, that I would be in favor of it.
Oh, I've lost my train of thought.
I do that all the time, Dick.
I got so absorbed in what you were saying.
Mike, you just looking to get the green light to just sort of proceed? Then
That's where I was. Thank you, Walker. I think he is actually he's proceeding with the geotech requirements, right, Mike?
Yes, in our partnership with the city, we're doing that. Now, here's the way things could turn out. I don't know. It could be that the area in yellow, it could be that there's something wrong, that, you know, the geotechnical investigation could indicate something that's not conducive to our storage plan, in which case, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is very preliminary, especially the whole office concept. I think I'm just putting it out there to the board. So someday when I come to you in the future, it won't be that much of a surprise. We need to do the geotech before we really make a lot of long-term plans for the property.
All right. We'll just keep us informed as the situation arises. I think it's exciting to talk about. I really do, and a very worthy subject. And thank you for bringing it to the board. You have alternative 1 and alternative 2, or I guess alternative 2 would be the backup position or backup reference.
Well, I should get a technical memo from the engineer on the E2I2 program in the coming weeks, possibly next week, but I don't have an exact date for that.
Okay.
So it will detail the pros and the cons of both sides in absence of the geotech. So, but yes, I always like to have a fallback position, and this is the 2 alternatives we've come up with so far.
To meet the requirements of the consent decree, though, we have got to have storage in this area somewhere. We will need to acquire some property somewhere.
Well, the original plan was a larger storage facility farther down in the city system. But the problem is we potentially have to, in addition to that storage, we have to potentially upsize several miles of sewer line, or we have overflows before you actually get to the storage. And that's part of the alternative process that we're working through.
Okay.
So there's even the original plan, I guess you'd say, did not include storage at either one of these 2 alternatives, but it did include upsizing a line. And recent modeling indicates that upsizing would have to be a lot farther than we may want to do.
So you have an SSO indicated on the map, and it says may occur here. So that this proposal would resolve a potential problem at that location.
Yeah, we had one there several weeks back when we had the 4-inch plus rain. So we kind of thought it could potentially happen in large rain events. So we're just trying to come up with solutions to these various problems.
So let me make sure I understand then. So assuming that we don't go forward with either alternative 1 or 2, we have a substantial upgrade in line size in front of us.
Yes, that would be in a partnership with the city, because this
Okay.
in purple is actually a city of Chattanooga line. So the overflow occurs in their system. However, as we've talked about more than once, we're sort of all in this together by virtue of our connections. So it's part of our working together to solve these problems.
All right. Anybody got any questions?
Yes, sir. Mike, would the alternative 2 site be a place you could put an office also, or is it, or not?
I think it's probably too small for that. We really need, by the time we have parking for the large trucks and, you know, bays and buildings for all equipment we have, we would use a good bit of that 7 acres in the other alternative. So I think the alternative 2 site is probably too small.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we look forward to seeing what happens in the future. Now, capital budget changes.
So what you see on the screen now is the capital budget that we approved back in the summer for capital projects. Now, this was before we knew that we were going to be able to participate in the county bond issue. So the second sheet, if you'll see, well, yeah. This sheet that's on the screen now, they are projects that we sent in for the county bond issue that we're participating in. And just so everyone's clear and people that don't know this county bond issue, it is not money from property tax. It's not free money. It's nothing like that. We are just piggybacking on a county bond issue, and the WWTA ratepayers are paying the portion that is going to be allotted to the WWTA. So this is, we are funding this portion of the bond issue. Just want to make that clear for anyone who did not understand that.
Mike, and it's correct to note that the rest of what I guess was about a $62, $63, $64 million bond issue, ours is the only portion of it that is treated that way.
Right. The other portion is the county's funding through various sources, but the 17 million portion that we have of that will be funded solely by the WWTA ratepayer.
But it also should be noted that county bond money is some of the least expensive funding that the WWTA can obtain. And so even though the ratepayers will be paying that money back, is from a financing standpoint, it's one of the better deals. Not as good as the SRF deal maybe, but a very, I hate to say, a very, very low interest rate and very, very favorable terms of repayment, even though the ratepayers will be paying it, if that makes sense.
Yes, it was very helpful that the county allowed us to participate in that bond issue.
Yes.
Hey, can I add to Bill's remarks? And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I think that the other piece of it that's kind of really important is that These are Mike and the staff's recommendations on the way these funds would be expended, but we have the flexibility. We are not bound by any particular project based on as a condition of receiving this money. So am I right, Mike, that the staff does have flexibility to use this money as y'all see appropriate and where it's needed the work and highest priorities?
Yes, generally, I mean, generally we would stick to the projects that we submitted, but we can make changes if it makes more sense to make those changes.
I just want to make sure everybody was clear on that, because I think that's important.
As long as we stay within the $17 million allotment, shall we say.
Right.
So if you look between the sheets, there is some overlap from the original capital budget versus the new versus the bond issue projects. What I will be doing in the pretty near future is coming to you with an amended capital budget project list that will allow the capital budget to more match with the bond issue budget, just so we're all working from the same sheet, so to speak, and understand what our projects are and what we need to do. There's a couple of projects that have just popped up fairly recently that I will discuss as we go down the agenda sheet that I moved into the bond. We originally had a $5 million Abbison pump station in the original bond issue project, but it's really, there are other needs that have come up since we first proposed the idea of the Abbison pump station that are more pressing. So you'll not see that project on either the bond issue or the new capital budget that I will be proposing to you all probably next month.
Hey, Mike, it's Dick. Just to clarify, what's shown on the screen adds up to whatever that total is. Is that total and the total on the proposed WWTA capital budget for 2020, are those the same totals?
No, the original capital budget was 15 million. The bond issue is 17 million.
Okay.
The new capital budget will be somewhere in the 15 to 17 million dollar range, but I haven't worked out all those details. It's not going to be, 25 million or anything like that. We've got to stay in the realm that we'd originally planned.
So, but we're using the bond issue as the range of expenses.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I don't know if anybody else has any questions. That's about all I have to say right now about that particular topic.
Any comments or questions?
One real
Okay.
quick. You see these all these projects before us, and we're looking to start them in 2021. Do we have any clue as to when we expect completion on the bulk of all these? I'm just curious about timelines.
Well, we're generally shooting for a 3-year time frame. The bond projects need to be completed within 3 years. So typically it takes 3 years to complete a project. Now, some of these projects need to be completed much sooner, just for various reasons, and I'll get into that, I guess, especially on the Snow Hill. The Short Tail Springs upgrade. It's got a little shorter timeline, but generally it's 3 years.
That's pretty aggressive, isn't it? That's good.
Yeah, this is a whole new world for us.
Yeah.
People, I mean, we've never had this kind of capital activity in my lifetime with WWTA. Okay. So let's move on to the Snow Hill force main repair, if that's where you want to go, Mike.
Okay, so this is a project that came up on our radar fairly recently. So this is part of the turnaround project. So previously, this particular force main, the Roy Lane pump station pumps through this force main to Snow Hill. Well, once the turnaround is complete, Snow Hill will actually pump through this force main to Roy. So a complete opposite flow direction in the future plan. Well, the overall length of the force main is about 4,800 feet between Snow Hill and Roy. And unfortunately, the last, 870 feet or so was ductile iron pipe. The remaining portion of the force main is PVC. Well, unfortunately, we discovered when we were attempting to do some preliminary turnaround work that this section, the ductile section of the force main, is corroded and weakens, and it's really beyond use. So we need to replace this section in green of this force main. And that was not anything we had planned on, but it's something we have to do. We actually can't even send Snow Hill flow to Roy Lane until we make this repair. And what has happened, hydrogen sulfide has corroded the upper portion of the pipe, because this particular section acted as a gravity flow section in the old configuration. And when that happens, there are situations where the H2S can pretty much just deteriorate the pipe beyond use, and that's what's happened. In the new configuration, this green section would all be under pressure. And unfortunately, that's what we discovered when we put that under pressure, that this segment is generally beyond use. I don't know if that, typically ductile iron pipe has a coating to prevent this from happening. I don't know if this pipe wasn't coated, or I really don't really know why this happened, but regardless, we have this issue.
How old is that pipe, Mike?
About 15 years old.
15 years, okay.
I also don't really understand why this particular section is not PVC like the rest of the pipe. We wouldn't have this problem, but for whatever reason, that's how this was built.
So Mike, if it gets replaced, will you go back with PVC or with ductile iron?
We will go back with PVC, except we're going to break this up into two phases. There is a section under Rogers Branch that is potentially was a flooded section, meaning it had water, which potentially that section may not be corroded, but we won't really know that until we start replacing the pipe. But that section would have to remain ductile but under the creek, but the rest will be PVC.
So this would become the last component of the turnaround project?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have already put this out to take bids on this section, and the bid open tomorrow on this.
But we would have had to fix this turnaround or not, right?
Yes. Well, actually, with the turnaround, ultimately we would have fixed it eventually, but this being a gravity section in the old configuration, it didn't have any pressure on it. So
Oh, okay.
that's how we sort of discovered this.
Discovered, okay. Okey-doke. And timing on this is pretty short term, right?
It's very critical because the final portion of the turnaround over at Green Gap and Roy Lane require us to send flow back through this force main. And we, for 3 or 4 days, and I'm hesitant to do that because I don't know the condition of the force main at this point. So we really need to get this done before we can complete the last portion of the turnaround.
All right.
So it's pretty critical. We'll be coming to you next week with our recommendation when we receive the bids on Friday.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, how long, this bill, how long will this increase the time until the turnaround is complete?
Well, this project shouldn't take very long. Right now, we would be scheduled to have the Green Gap work done December 1st. It probably pushes the Green Gap work into January sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Does Short Tail Springs tie into any of this at all?
Well, it is actually just upstream of the Snow Hill pump station. So in the new capital budget, there's an upgrade for the Short Tail Springs pump station. And that was something we had planned to do a little farther down the line. That Short Tail Springs pump station is really undersized for the amount of flow going into it. And when I say undersized, I mean the station, it runs 15 hours a day or so, depending on the time of year and the amount of I&I that's coming in. In summertime, it runs less, but either way, it's due an upgrade is the bottom line. It has a 6-inch force main, and we're probably looking at going to an 8-inch force main, possibly. But that was going to be a future project. Once we did the turnaround, the Short Tail Springs area was probably still going to remain in a moratorium while we were doing other projects. But something has come up. Well, a couple of things came up. Of course, the bond, being able to participate in the bond with the county helped with a little bit with our capital expenditures. So it freed up a little money to do Short Tail. But the most pressing thing is the highway department notified us about a month ago or so that they had planned on resurfacing Snow Hill Road from Short Tail Springs Road up to Mahan Gap. And as you can see on the map, there is a 3,100 foot section of force main in Snow Hill Road. And I'm not sure why it is actually located in the road and not on to the either side. There may be some additional utilities. There's some reason that they located the force main in the road, and potentially we may have to also locate the force main, the upgraded force main in the road. But either way, we're under a time crunch now because the highway department is telling us we need to have this section done by April 1st. And what we didn't want to get into, if we planned on doing Short Tail 2 years from now or whatever, obviously we don't want to pave the road and then a year or a year and a half or two come back and tear the road up again. So basically just move this project up in our timeline, at least this section. So in anticipation of this, we have solicited RFQs from engineers and selected an engineer for the project, and it's Corey Engineering is the selection. You can see there on the screen, we had a number of engineering firms submit, but we liked Croy's proposal best. So we'll be coming, we really need to come to you next week with a contract. I don't know that we'll be able to get that together or not that quickly, but we're attempting to do so, because by the time we do the design and the work, we'll be hard pressed on that April 1st deadline that the highway department is putting.
So Snow Hill Road, that force main is undersized currently.
The Short Tail Springs force main, yes, it's a 6-inch force main. It is undersized.
And we're gonna enlarge it.
Yes.
Okay. Are we gonna put another pipe beside it, or are we just gonna?
We'll have to leave the current force main in service because we wouldn't be able to bypass.
Okay.
And do the work. So we'll have to lay a new force main in close
Okay.
proximity to the existing force main.
So that gives us more capacity there in that area.
It will, and it'll open up. There's some property that over in that area that it will open up for development that previously we're going to have to wait for additional sewer capacity.
Okay. But it is an attractive area for development.
Yes, we've gotten calls from several property owners in that area for
Okay.
when they would be able to connect.
All right. Any questions, anybody? And what's the total on that little project?
Well, I would anticipate somewhere in $1.4 or $5 million range.
Okay.
But that would be part of the engineering evaluation.
All right. And that is on the list for the amended budget, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Got it.
There may be an opportunity for us to use a little synergy with the highway department since they were going to pave anyway, and we were potentially going to have to pave. There's a potential for a reduced cost for us, but
all right,
we'll be talking to them about that.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? All right, very good. Signal Mountain Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrade.
So, as you may know, there's been numerous discussions about either keeping the plant or pumping signal flow to the city of Chattanooga. And to me, the concept of keeping the plant is somewhat attractive in that would be wheelage and treatment we wouldn't have to pay, and it potentially helps us with what we would have to do storage on the city of Chattanooga side as part of our partnership. We've been in discussions with TDEC about that, and they're not opposed. Wouldn't say that they're for it, but they're not opposed to it. So we need to do some studies to decide where we're going to go, regardless of whether or not we ultimately pump to the city or not. We still have to make some upgrades to the plant in the meantime to satisfy the state order that we're under. So spending that money and then ultimately closing the plant is somewhat unattractive, as you can imagine. So Scott has been intimately involved in the plant situation over the years, and especially with the TDEC order that we're under. So I asked him for a proposal to consider this plant upgrade. And that is what you see in the packet. Now, Scott is also prepared to give a little presentation if you would like to see it on what we have going on there. Hopefully we can make that work should you want to see it. But the bottom line is I'm wanting to engage Scott with this contract to make the interim plant upgrades with a look to the future of potentially keeping the wastewater plant, provided we can meet TDEC requirements.
So Scott can jump in here and give us a little presentation.
Sure.
I would like to see that. How's the board feel?
I would like to see it.
Enough said. That's good. Scott, you want to go?
Taylor or Caleb, can you guys pull up the PowerPoint? And I'll run through it real quick.
Okay. Now this is just the treatment plant. This is not.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And while he's pulling up the PowerPoint, and talking to TDEC and going back, they have what's called a design criteria for sewage works. It's about that thick, and most of this is related to what is required anytime you make any modifications to a sewage treatment plant. So there's a whole guidebook of things that they require us to do in a certain order. And one of the first things they require is a preliminary engineering report that pretty much lays out the whole problem for the area, everything from the collection systems to the actual treatment plant. And it's a very set format they want to see. They get that, they review it, they assign a permit writer to help you and start looking at your alternatives that you're evaluating. And then you go into the next step where you actually start the design process, which ends up in a engineering report, and you end up with about a 90% design. So what you see up on the screen right now is kind of a layout. Obviously the plant is there at the bottom of the hill, and all those red dots you see are the sanitary sewer overflows. Probably that's a rolling number of SSOs that we've had up in the Signal Mountain area over the last 12 months. Go ahead and go to the next slide, guys. So really, as Mike pointed out, we've got two options here, and there's been a lot of confusion about this, but it's either we keep the plant that we have now and we do some upgrades there to handle wet weather flows, because that's really where we have an issue. Anytime it rains, those flows go up drastically, and the ability of that plant to handle that and treat it properly to meet permit is exceeded. Or we decommission this plant and we send the flows to Chattanooga and let them handle the treatment. And regardless of which of those options, and it's an either or option, it's not send some of the flows to Chattanooga and keep the plant. You can't afford to do both. It's one or the other. We got to kind of pick something and go with it because we're limited on our funds. So regardless of which option we pick, there's some preliminary or initial work we have to do right now, regardless of which option we pick, to get ourselves set up for the future. And that's part of what I'm going to talk about here is there's repairs at the plant, and then we need to start looking upstream at some of the I&I issues and some of the things that need to be done there. So next slide. So these upgrades are required at the plant, whether we keep it or send Chattanooga to send the flow to Chattanooga. So the one that's underway and we're actually ready to bid out right now, or will be in the next 30 to 45 days, is repairing a catwalk system. There's an existing catwalk system over the main clarifier at the plant, and it's in pretty bad shape, and it's become a situation where it's very difficult for the operators to get up there and do what they need to do. So that project's already been designed. We're in the process of putting it out for bid. But in addition to that safety part and maintenance, support system, we need to add a new waste activated sludge tank, about 50,000 gallons in size, to kind of help us with the actual treatment process there. Because what happens is, and Alice knows this better than anybody else, but what ends up happening is we're not able to waste the sludge as much as we need to. And what happens is we end up with a pretty large sludge blanket in there, and then we start having treatability issues, particularly if we get a high flow event where it rains. A lot of these solids are getting washed into other parts of the plants. They're getting washed into the secondary clarifier and then on downstream into the actual coring contact chamber, which all that has to be cleaned out, and it takes a while for the operator to get the plant operating again. So adding that waste activated sludge tank will give the operator a lot of flexibility to make sure the plant, while we decide what we're going to do with the flows, it gives them an opportunity to be able to operate the plant a lot more efficiently and keep it from violating its permit. The other thing is adding some new screening and headworks to also help, because with all the issues we have upstream in the collection system, we're getting a lot of debris that's coming into the plants, and the current screening system allows a lot of solids and debris, again, to enter into the plant, and it creates a lot of maintenance issues and inhibits the operator's ability to operate the plant properly. So we need to get some new screening and headworks in there. Now, even if we go to the city of Chattanooga and we end up having to put a pump station there and a force main, or even an EQ basin there on that site, we're still going to need that headworks and that screening to help keep that debris from going into a pump station and then getting pumped on downstream to Chattanooga. It's going to create problems at any pump station we decide to, put in, as well as issues on Chattanooga's side. So that work's not really throwaway. It would work in either case. Really, the only one here is the extra 50,000 gallon, WAS tank. And even that can probably be reused if we did decide to go to Chattanooga once we got the rest of the numbers together. So next slide, Caleb, and I'll show you a little picture. So what we're talking about here is, as you can see, we've got this catwalk system over the existing primary contact stabilization basin. And long story short, the support bracing for this is just rusted through. I mean, this plant, that stuff's been there for 50 plus years. And it's getting to the point where a lot of those bracings for the catwalk are rusted through, and it's really dangerous for the operator to get up there and use that catwalk, or be able to bring in gear and equipment, or have multiple people up help them, just because of the issues there. So we're going to replace that. And then that square box at the top is the new screens and headworks, where we need to go in and put some additional screening in there and some additional flow monitoring to, again, help the operator operate the plant a little bit better. And then that big round circle is kind of where we were planning on sticking the WAS tank. Obviously, we got that space out to the left of the existing primary contact stabilization basin, which would be ideal for a WAS tank, but we're trying to stick it somewhere and leave that space available for a future pump station or storage or additional treatment. So we're trying to, whatever we put in here, we're trying to leave ourselves flexibility for future things. So next slide, Caleb. So these short-term, the near-term things we need to do, we're estimating just under about $5 million to make these repairs, regardless of whether we keep the plant or go to Chattanooga. This is what we need to spend and get prepared to spend to keep the plant operating till we figure out what we're going to do. And the benefits are, again, we're going to remove some of the solids that are interfering with the operator's ability to operate the plant. We're going to improve our solids retention time, and then we're also going to improve our flow measurement and treatability. And all this stuff can be reused even if we decide to send this stuff to the city of Chattanooga. Next slide. So our next steps, we're going to finish these catwalk repairs. We're already under contract. We'll be bidding this out here in the next 30 days or so. Then we need to go ahead and move to investigate and design of the WAS storage and the screening and the headworks modifications. And the first part of that is putting a preliminary engineering report together to send into TDEC, telling them why we're doing this and what our alternatives we were considering. And then along with that is actually really delve in here and put some good alternatives together on, if we're going to keep the plant, what are we going to do to make sure we can treat the wet weather flow events that we get there? Or is it more cost effective to go to the city of Chattanooga? And that's really where this whole PER, it's about 10 sections of this thing, where we've got to lay out the whole game plan and the alternatives we've considered, complete with cost estimates, and almost have a 30% design ready to go to TDEC and SRF. And once they approve that, then we would move forward with the actual design of the plant and getting the funding for the construction of all this. So there it is, kind of laid out, the whole game plan of what we need and why we need to do it to move forward. And that,
thank you. I'm looking at the capital budget that includes $600,000 for basically studies at this point in time.
Yes.
The big number that follows, obviously, the $4 to $5 million project is not yet budgeted, I assume, right?
Right.
Okay.
How we proceed would be part of next year's capital budgeting process.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. But the planning, but the study part of it is covered in the current budget.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Scott.
No problem.
Anybody got questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Alice?
I do. No, I definitely think it's an excellent idea to evaluate the alternatives for the Signal Mountain plant. But I did have a question on the, as part of the engineering scope, there is there will be some pilot studies done at the plant on different treatment schemes. And it's estimated that those would separately cost the WWTA between, I think, $30,000 and $65,000. I'm wondering how many different vendors or pilot projects are anticipated during this study?
I think what we were looking at is we've already been in discussions with about 3 different vendors. We try to get that narrowed down to 2 and get proposals, from those 2, and probably do no more than two pilot studies. But we've started out with 3 because we really need to get a good handle on, can this system be used not only to treat wet weather, and will the permit modifications required under our current permit be allowed by TDEC, but can this treatment technology be utilized during some of the dry weather flows? Because, the order is we want to get, if we go this route to keep the plant, we need a system that can take the place of the existing plant for a period of time to allow us to take it completely down, because that old system has issues internally with baffle walls that failed, some piping that's not working the way it should. So that's part of why the treatability, we need it to that technology to be able to do dry weather and wet weather flows, to allow us to take the existing plant offline for a period of time, see what we need to do to repair that, bring it back online, get the repairs ready to go, take it back down, and actually fix that component as well if we elect to keep the plant. So that treatability study is going to be real critical in making sure that if we go with some type of non-biological treatment like filtration, that we're giving our permit writers at TDEC a nice warm fuzzy feeling that we can meet our permit with this technology.
Right. Okay. Well, that helps me understand approximately how much additional funding would be required during this study for those pilot projects. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? Again, thank you, Scott.
No problem.
This is an enormous project, an undertaking. And it'll be a long term, but good luck. Fantastic. Moving on to contract amendment for Soddy Daisy Industrial Force Main Upgrade Project.
So
Mike,
the next couple of items on the agenda really are all Soddy Daisy related, and this is one of them. But probably, Taylor, if you can move a little farther down, get to the letter we got from the city of Chattanooga, because that's really what is driving pretty much everything. So a little past history with our Soddy Daisy situation. We have a moratorium there. We've had more than 5 overflows at one point, and it covers most of the Soddy Daisy area. This moratorium does. So our initial plan was we were going to upgrade the station to be able to pump 2.9 million gallons per day, because what we have discovered is a good bit of our issue is the current Soddy Daisy force main, most of the force main is 16-inch diameter. There is a short section under North Chickamauga Creek that is 8-inch diameter. So our project was going to increase the 8-inch to 16-inch to match the rest of the force main.
Well,
that was going to be pump upgrades and some control upgrades at the station, because the control cabinet at the station, well, it needs to be replaced. So that was the initial project, and we've been working through making that all come together. But one of the things we had to do is we had to get the agreement from the city of Chattanooga for this 2.9 million gallons per day. Well, they're not really agreeable to us sending that kind of flow on a regular basis. So this letter has several requirements. We can send the 2.9 sometimes, basically, but not all the time. And we're limited there with that flow. So frankly, this is going to result in a more complicated control system if we attempt to meet all the requirements of this letter. But the other part of this is we don't have a lot of choice. If we don't meet their requirements, then TDEC will not allow us a permit to proceed with the project. So we have to juggle the city's requirements with our own needs. And that's where all this is leading to in the Soddy situation. At least part of the problem with the Soddy force main right now is it's actually too big. But what happens in the drier months when there is less flow is we have a buildup of solids in the force main, and it restricts the flow. When we get into the rainier season in the winter, while we have this restricted flow, ultimately the line tends to clean itself out in the rainy season when we have more I&I and more flow. But while we're getting to that point, we are subject to having these overflows. And that's part of the reason we're under the moratorium. It seems kind of strange, but the force main is actually too big. Therefore, we need a pump station that will pump the 2.9 million gallons per day. And that translates to a rate of 2,000, a little over 2,000 gallons per minute, which would scour the force main out. Well, the problem is, as I mentioned before, the city's not going to let us do that all the time. So part of the proposal from CTI involves potentially changing the controls and just basically revisiting our design based on this requirement from the city. Now, let me say this about the city. They're not just trying to be difficult. The problem is if we send them the 2.9 million gallons per day on a regular basis in a rain event, they have an overflow immediately downstream. So they're not too excited about us moving our overflow just out of our system down to theirs. So that's the reason that requirement from the city. So Taylor, if you can go to that other map. Maybe the other direction, I don't know. There we go. So what you see here is the Soddy Industrial Pump Station, and it's kind of hard to make out, but there's a line in green there, and that is the force main from the pump station. But immediately adjacent to the pump station is some additional property. And this property has been for sale. I'm proposing that we investigate purchasing this property for future storage. It's very convenient to the station. It would allow us immediate credits to get us out of the moratorium. And it would solve our potential issue with the excess flow that the city of Chattanooga is not going to allow us to send. As you can see from the map, that in the top right there, you see where the overflow, the moratorium overflow occurred. So it's if we were to have storage at the pump station, we solve a lot of problems. The property is available, but it's potentially about a $320,000 purchase roughly. There again, much like the other property we talked about, we need an appraisal and we need to do a geotechnical investigation to make sure that we can actually site a tank there. But I think there's a lot of advantages to looking at purchasing this property for storage. So if anybody has questions.
Well, does this storage replace some of the storage under the E2I2 agreement?
No, we don't have any kind of E2I2
for Saudi.
Plan that for that in the E2I2 thing for flow from Saudi.
Okay.
And there's not a particularly good location downstream on the city side for storage. We did entertain that. I have had discussions with the city about that, but there's just not a good, not a particularly good spot for storage. The thing about this is it's in an industrial park, so our potential, neighborhood issues are pretty well nil. And it's a really easy place to put storage, and it also solves the technical problem.
All for the reasonable cost of a couple $1 million?
Well, depending on how large we decide to make the storage, that's the question.
Okay.
And honestly, I do not have that. I mean, we put a 3 million gallon storage tank there, we would probably never worry about the Saudi system, or at least not in the next 20 years, we'll say. However, a cost consideration, that storage is, anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a foot. So we easily get to $5 or $6 million pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
But the bottom line is the property is available. I think we should take advantage of the property being available, assuming it meets the geotechnical requirements.
Yeah.
One of the things that a storage tank, in addition to providing just plain wet weather storage, one of our issues with this overly large force main is that when we have the low flows and we don't meet scouring velocity, it deposits stuff in the force main. One thing we would be able to do with this storage tank is right now we can't even store enough to give the force main an adequate flush. But if we were able to build storage here to flush the force main and be able to store enough to flush the force main, that's another technical advantage to storage in this location.
So this has implications for the, I guess, for the consent decree, because it affects overflows, but it also creates capacity, doesn't it?
It potentially gives us a way to create, potentially a lot of capacity in the Saudi Daisy area in the future.
Yeah. Assuming Chattanooga could take it.
Well, what we would do, we would use this storage to meter the flow down.
Okay.
To what they can accept.
So that storage tank really has to be built for the future, not for the present.
Well, really a little bit of both. And honestly, I need to figure out how we're going to go about funding this storage, because we did not have storage planned.
Yeah.
In Saudi Daisy, we really were just going to spend the $2.5 million on the pump station upgrades and some other some other I&I work. But really what needs to happen is, since this property is here and it's available right now, I really think we need to purchase this property.
Is there a market price? Is there an ask out there?
About $320,000 roughly.
Oh, okay. Any comments from the board?
Would you be able to do a geotech investigation before purchasing to make sure it would meet our needs?
Yeah, we would make it part of the purchase contingent on the is how we would do that. And the other thought is, you know, it's much like that other storage situation. You see the area that's cordoned off in red. That's really what we would really need for storage. We don't need the rest of it. It's also possible, though, that the area in red is unsuitable for storage, but the other section might be. We don't know all these things right now, but we could ultimately may decide to sell off the remaining property after we've sited the tank and got our use of it. That's just something we could potentially do as well. We don't need the entire 3 acres, but it'll be nice to have at the beginning.
Okay.
I got a question.
Yep.
Mike, are we able to lift the moratorium based on everything you said, without doing something like this?
I have to head to the bathroom. I'll be back in just a second.
Well, I think it is possible. One of the things that happened to us with this moratorium is, unfortunately, we've had this massive amount of rain the last couple of years. In normal years, we wouldn't have a moratorium. But because of all the rain and the way things it turned out, we do have moratoriums. No, they don't make any allowance for excessive rainfall. I wish they did, but they don't seem to care about things like that. They just expect us to keep everything in the pipe. So, so I guess the answer is, it is possible. I think it's potentially unlikely, and it certainly would make things more difficult.
So we could get the moratorium lifted, but if we have another extremely heavy rainy year, we'd be back under another moratorium. We'd be in and out of moratoriums. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we haven't had an overflow. It's up at Saudi since, I think, this past April. So, you know, if we could make it a year without an overflow, there might be an argument to be made with TDEC that, hey, look, we've had this excessive rainfall. So we really shouldn't be under a moratorium. Their regulation does not make any allowances for that, though. So so I don't know how successful we would be. We really need to pump, best I can determine, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 gallons per minute, generally, to not have overflows. The problem is, in the summer months, we get down to 600 or 700 gallons a minute because of this debris. And then by the time January or February rolls around, after there's been a fair amount of rain, we will have pushed and cleaned the line out and get back up in that pumping range. Problem is, in the meantime, we've potentially had a couple of overflows, all leading to our more than 5 count moratorium situation. I mean, it'd really be nice if the force main, apparently we built this force main about 15 years ago. I guess we had an idea for future long-term growth, which is okay, but we really probably only needed about a 12-inch force main. And the debris problem, but that's not what we have. We have the larger one and a debris problem.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, based on the discussion, I think it'd be a good idea to pursue the purchase of this tract of property. I'd be in
Thank you,
favor.
Bill.
Yes, sir.
Is that a motion?
That would be a motion. Yes, sir.
Ah, okay, very good. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Who is that?
Curtis.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. What exactly is the motion, Bill? Did you just, it's a,
I think the motion would be to allow Mike to continue negotiations or whatever to purchase that property. Of course, the committee and board would have to approve the actual purchase, but
okay,
I think if he doesn't see, if the board isn't in favor, he doesn't need to pursue that. And I think, so the motion would be for him to pursue that, if that's not too vague.
well, that's fine. He's going to explore the possibility. Okay. Is there any further discussion from anybody else on the board? Any questions? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Very good. All right. Outstanding.
Thank you very much.
I took a break. I had to come back. Where are we? Does the Saudi change order, Lake Carolyn, does all that tie into this, Mike, or is it?
Lake Carolyn is actually a different project. So that's sort of an in-house project we've been working on. We think there is significant I&I on the Lake Carolyn pump station, and Lake Carolyn pumps downstream. Lake Carolyn is upstream of the Saudi industrial station. So any I&I removal also helps our situation.
Oh, okay.
It also helps us establish moratorium credits. So what we're looking at is putting out this project in-house to do some manhole rehab, and we think we have pretty good bang for our buck here when it all shakes out.
All right.
And I'm not looking for a motion necessarily. It's just sort of it's information for the board that we are pursuing this, and we'll be coming to you in the future,
Okay.
with a contract to do this work.
All right. The Saudi change order, did I skip over that?
Yes. So what you'll notice about the Saudi change order, we're really just sort of moving money around. We're not necessarily spending more. If you go down a little farther, Taylor, you'll get to the end table. Probably a little farther down. There we go. So we're basically moving money inside the contract. To be able to do this work.
Okay.
And I suppose I'll be looking for a motion to approve the contract amendment.
Do you need one, Mike, if there's no change in the amount?
Well, I'll be honest, Alice, I don't know for sure.
That's what I was wondering.
I guess,
Yeah.
I guess I just want to be
Yeah.
open. We're changing things whenever I can ahead of time, and that's what I'm doing here. So
Just clarify for me, if you know, but this particular project is tied into that, to the the topic right up prior to that, correct?
Yes. What
Okay,
this does, the reason for the amendment is to help with compliance, with potential design changes to potentially comply with the city of Chattanooga requirements.
okay. I don't see that necessarily requires a motion.
Well, I have a question. I see that we're taking away the amount of money originally allocated for easements. Is there no need for any easement work on this project, Mike?
We've pretty much done all that already.
Okay,
Did that mostly in-house.
okay.
You're still spending money.
But if you need a motion, I'll make the motion to approve the amendment change.
Okay, very good. It never hurts. You can't
Yeah.
go wrong with a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second concerning the Soddy Daisy or the Soddy change order. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, very good. That takes us to the Red Bank Rehab project. Mike?
So Eric is going to take us through this one.
So in Red Bank, we are under a moratorium, as most of you guys are aware. And we were asked to generate some credits for a potential development property on the old school property on Dayton Boulevard, close to Morrison Springs. SNME had done a good deal of SSES work, determining some spots where we could get some credits. The problem with that was that most of it was already rehabbed. So we put out a job in-house that kind of buttons up sort of the rehab that's already been done. And what I've done here, this spreadsheet that you've got in front of you basically has two tables. The one on the left is essentially the certified bid tabulation from the sole bidder we had from BLD. And they're a known quantity in the rehab game. They particularly specialize in sealing off laterals, in cast in place pipe work. What I've got on the right is what I called the expected usage. More or less, the bids came in at $853,600. The spreadsheet on the right comes in at $591,040. And that's kind of about what I expect us to spend on the job. I threw in a whole bunch of extra items, such as digging up and replacing laterals and digging and replacing concrete for driveways or in roads or this, that, or the other. And I don't anticipate using much of those items. However, if I don't have them in the bid, we're pretty much at the contractor's mercy once we enter a contract with him to just via change order. If I've got them in the bid, I've got them locked into a certain price, and that's what I was trying to do. And that's why the base bid's so much higher than what I anticipate spending.
That's like a 30% contingency.
It would be a fairly large contingency. As far as if you guys would like to recommend this to the board, I wouldn't be looking for any contingency money on this project. I'm not sure we could actually enter the contract at anything less than the base bid.
And that base bid is $853,600, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
But you expect it to be way less than that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know, have we ever done this before, Mike?
I don't know that we've done, well, not in my time have we done an in-house project like that. But,
Okay.
you know, I'm trying to save money where we can. Now, what we will do is we we'll have S&ME do construction, inspection, and admin for this project, really just because in-house, we don't have the expertise for this particular kind of rehab.
So a contract is all based on unit pricing, in other words. And so if we were to be approving a contract, it would be an up to price as this base bid. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And here's what I was trying to hedge against, Alice. A lot of these lines in Red Bank that this work's going to be performed on was either slip lined or pipe burst. And you know just as well as anybody that sometimes the new host pipe or the slip liner or the pipe burst line can shift inside the original host pipe. And if that is the case, we're going to wind up with a pipe that's got about 10 laterals on it that all are going to have to be dug up because the internal sealing of those laterals can't be performed. And that's why there's such a big discrepancy in this particular job, is because if there is a shift, we're going to have to be able to deal with it. I was trying to build that in on the front end as opposed to accounting for it through a change order later.
Okay.
I see.
And this is coming out of cash, right?
Well, actually, this will probably be part of the $2.5 million in the capital budget for Red Bank Rehab.
Yeah.
I will probably modify that project slightly, and this money would probably be bond.
Okay.
This is one of our problems, and we'll have this problem also on Signal Mountain. Really difficult to rehabilitate something that's already been rehabilitated, just not so well. But it's the position we find ourselves in some of these service areas.
It's true.
But when we get to the point where this project is complete and you come to us with a report like you did early on in the meeting, you'll be able to say what deviation there was from the estimated lower price to what reality was in the end.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all. That's what we need to know, just to make sure.
Sure.
So what do you need? You need approval?
No, sir. I imagine I just need a recommendation to the full board to proceed with the project.
Okay. Do you hear a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Alice. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Walker. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? I'm assuming we still have our board members there. I only see 3 people.
I'm still here.
Okay. So we're going to recommend that to the full board. Thank you, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Lookout Mountain Phase 2 discussion. Thank you all for hanging in there with us. Well, this is a large agenda today, but you can see it's very necessary. What is the Lookout Mountain Phase 2 discussion, Mike?
So in Lookout Mountain Phase 1, we've of course done the rehab, and we're getting extremely close to the end. In fact, we may even actually be at the end. But we have additional money left over in the SRF loan. So one of our issues is all the work up to now has been upstream, basically. If you see where the line says the moratorium overflows occur here, well, there are several manholes in that area that overflow in heavy rain events, and they're all the work we've done to date has been upstream of that. And there's still some additional work to do. If you look, if Taylor followed the line down from where that, as you can see, the flow arrows, we get a manhole there, and even better, we go into that one manhole there, actually sort of bucking how you would generally want flow to go in a sewer system. But that's just the way it was done then. And you might think, well, why didn't they just connect the line there? Well, the problem is that's about I don't know, Walker, probably a 75-foot bluff or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, 50.
75.
Creek there. Yeah. So they did it this way, mostly because they had to do it this way. And I'm sure probably there were additions to the sewer system over the years that, maybe it didn't have quite all those connections. But at the very least, one of the things we're going to be exploring is in this area, potentially upsizing from where it says moratorium overflow occurs here on farther down, even below downstream of the green line, even farther down. Now we connect to the city of Chattanooga farther down, and there are other issues potentially there with the line that they operate and maintain. But either way, we'll be coming to you soon with some additional work in this area. At the very least, you see the little line in green, that's something that I just want to do. Basically, it's relatively inexpensive, but it would at least, if we made that connection point, it would at least take care of that unfavorable angle that we're coming into that other manhole in the existing system. But we're going to have to spend additional phase 2 money in this area to hopefully help with the bottleneck that we've got right there. And SNME is looking at that, and they have some ideas too. So, but we'll be coming to you with this pretty soon, because really we need to address we have a timeline with the SRF loan, so we're going to have to do some things pretty quickly.
Mike, those are all gravity lines, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a neat junction right there.
Well, that's some hard right turns, huh?
For sure.
Not exactly how you want everything to flow.
We think there's potentially maybe an airlock situation there too, and not enough venting. Of course, the problem is if you vent very much, then you wind up with an odor problem. So
yeah,
we have to figure out how we solve these problems, and
okay,
we're working on it.
That's interesting. Any questions? So that's going to be done with remaining money on the SRF loan.
Yes.
Okay.
Now the little line in green we'll probably just do. We probably won't do with the SRF. Well,
okay.
That's not very expensive.
Okay.
But we're going to have to reallocate some of that SRF money there.
And the last item on the agenda is the adjustment report.
So going into the previous variance discussion, as you can see, and you all are aware, we make a lot of adjustments already.
Yeah.
So, and you can see from the column there, the wheelage column, we try to indicate when we think we've actually had to pay for the leak versus not. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any questions about these, but this is just the typical general knowledge. These are the adjustments that we've done.
Well, I'm just looking there at there's Melanie Lehman, Berkshire Circle, sprinkler. Did we approve? We didn't approve that one. You all did. Staff did that. Okay. All right. We have made it through the agenda. Does anybody have any questions or any comments at this stage? We have a meeting scheduled for next Wednesday at 3:30, I think. And it will be via Zoom again, Michael, you think?
Yes.
But the building is open these days. And we have the option to move back into the DRC if you would like, at least for the board meetings. Probably not the agenda meeting where we met in the small room, but in the boardroom we meet in the big room. What's your pleasure? You want to try to move it back into the DRC for the boardrooms or for the board meetings?
I'm for that.
Mike?
I would say that the problem with the normal boardroom meeting is we don't really have a way to socially distance there. If very many people show up.
You mean for the board meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could. Go ahead, Bill.
Didn't we, by changing the board meeting from the 3rd to the 4th Wednesday, didn't the city have a problem with us using it that Wednesday? Am I right?
Well, one thing that has happened since the DRC's been shut down so long, a lot of the room assignments have, they're in a state of flux, I guess, is what I would say. So I don't know if the room I suspect the room is available. It's possible that it's not. I don't imagine there's another meeting in there. I guess our other issue is we probably advertise this as a Zoom meeting, and Natasha's coming in to tell me something.
Not really.
So.
I want to say hello to Neil Sutherland and to Peggy Eagle, who have been patiently listening to all of this conversation. I welcome them, enjoy having them part of us. But did you all have any comments? Neil, Peggy? Peggy shaking her head.
No, sir.
Okay. No, we have no lawsuits, do we, Neil?
No, we got one settled.
Good. Nothing outstanding right now. That's good.
Nothing outstanding right now. Maybe we should cross our fingers.
Yeah, we just won't talk about it. No, I'll go back to the issue of the DRC. If it is available and it is acceptable, given the circumstances, would you like to think about meeting back in that room for the board meeting? Rather than via Zoom. Give me a hand or something there. You want to go that way?
Well,
it looks like most people are shaking their heads.
I'm
Yes.
saying we need to follow suit with what the local authority on both city and county are sticking to until they do it. And right now they're still WebEx or Zoom, somewhat hybrid.
Okay.
I just think that you got to follow suit with the governing bodies doing.
I don't know how you all feel. I'm getting more and more comfortable with the Zoom meetings, to tell you the truth. Yes, Bill.
Mike mentioned that there may be a possibility that we can't accomplish the social distancing and the rules, as Doug mentioned, that we have to deal with. I certainly prefer to meet in person, but if that's an issue, maybe we ought to wait.
Okay. All right.
I do have one other thing.
Okay.
That one adjustment you mentioned, Melanie Lehman, that was actually something that went through Variance.
Okay, I wondered if that was the one that she lived
Natasha
in
reminded me of
Holly
that.
Hills. Okay. Okay. That's the one that really brought the question of sprinklers to the forefront. So,
Yes.
yeah, so, okay, so be it. That's all right. I don't have anything else. Does anyone have anything else? Thank you all again for your patience and your willingness to work through a long agenda. But my guess is these agendas will continue to get fairly long because we're doing more and more and more. So again, thank you for what you're doing and being a part of the WWTA. Any reason why we can't adjourn? All right.